Hello. Let's do a poetry koan, shall we? A poetry koan and drinking some green tea. So, I've got into this cycle recently of making a YouTube video and then feeling terribly, terribly ashamed of the self who made the video and then bearing the video. And I wonder who I'm bearing it from. Because when I first started on YouTube a year ago, Fortune was smiling somewhat favorably on my offerings, and they would often get a couple of hundred views, or I mean, some of them even got a few more than that. Whereas, I guess at the moment, I feel like I'm in a culvert. And I use that word deliberately because that's coming up in the poem. But I feel like it's good. It's good, it's good. I tell myself it's good because, why is it good? Why is it good? Why is it good? It's good because it's part of the, for want of a better word, the annihilation, the extermination, the snuffing out, which must be done. The snuffing out of ego, the snuffing out of the I that may hold certain ideas about itself. I am clever, I am witty, I have things to say. Only to discover that, well, that may be the case or it may not be. But either way, there is no receptacle for all of that other than a hole in the ground in which the jute sack might be deposited. But once you've gone through all of that, and once you have separated yourself from a name, as well as from shame, because shame can only attach itself to a name or to a person. Shame can only go, that person is stupid, or that person is boring, or that person is inconsequential, or whatever the case may be. That person is not worth my time and attention. That's really what it boils down to on here, right? You're worth my time and attention. You're not worth my time and attention. But again, my time, my attention, in this case, whoever that's coming from, that, as we know, is a somewhat spurious entity, in the sense that I, you, everyone is not really worth anyone's time or attention. It's really about relationships, isn't it? Duh. And I think poetry koan in a way, poetry koan is a fantasy space. It's a fantasy space in which I imagine what it would be like to have a another, an interested and interesting other who enjoys this kind of exploration with me. And so whenever I'm in the mood for it, we sit down and do some of that together. And all is good. I mean, what else? What else do I, as a ongoing soul entity, what is it I require beyond this? Nothing. As long as I can duck and dive and hide, as long as I can hide from shame, and there are lots of ways of doing that. Obviously, certainly not attaching this to a name is one way to hide from shame. Am I boring? Am I dull? Am I a waste of time? Yours and mine. Yes, but that's okay, because thankfully that I, in this case, is one of 10 billion. It doesn't have a name, it doesn't have a biography, it doesn't have some kind of status which it is trying to uphold or embroider through the working through of content, some egoic output. It's just a guy and some green tea and a poem and a phone on record mode, which is then eliciting a certain strand of discourse, which I enjoy following. And in the fantasy of poetry koan, there is this other who enjoys following that too with me. Something like that. It's another Mary. I'm going to start this project off with 3 Hail Marys. So we've done the tenor of your yes. Today it's my happiness. I laid my happiness in a field. My happiness lay in the field and looked up at the sky. My happiness extended the same courtesy to the clouds. My happiness in the field was visible for miles around. My happiness was visible to the hawk. My happiness was fond of the beetle beside it. A porcupine lumbered by. My happiness followed it. Perhaps because it was being followed, the porcupine stole my happiness. My happiness lumbered along after itself happily. We came to a road. The porcupine went into a culvert and didn't come out. And that was the end of my happiness. I was walking around yesterday thinking about this poem, and I had all sorts of ideas, and I had a whole long discussion with GPT. And as usual, I sort of thought, well, should I take all of this and package it into some kind of performative essay and present it with all the bells and whistles? and then my shame said to me, nah, it's just going to be another avenue for shame. Just leave that. Leave that and see how you wake up with this poem tomorrow morning. And so this is how I've woken up to this poem. I laid my happiness in a field. There's the sense here, I think, in this poem that happiness does not really belong to us, in a way. Maybe I'm stating the obvious. There's the sense that the poet is out for a walk with their happiness, or the poet, I don't know, this is their happiness, and they can take it and they can sort of lay it in a field, and then the happiness can do something. The happiness can be happy. And as idiotic as that potentially sounds, I think it's also true. I suppose one kind of litmus test I have for my mental health, for want of a better word, is simply this. It's sort of the happiness test, but it's not the test of, am I happy? It's the test of, it's sort of, am I happy? Happy, as in, am I feeling somewhat okay, benign, okay to be alive? Let's just put it in that sense. Am I feeling okay to be alive in this body, in this mind, with this life that I have, with the people I'm connected to or not connected to, etc., etc. Is that enough? Whatever that is. And happiness always says yes. In other words, if one's mental health, if one's well-being is less than zero, then the answer to that question is always going to be, this is good, this is fine. In other words, happiness is an unquestioning state. Happiness writes white. I don't know who said that. Some French person. That when we are happy, we don't, or not even happy. Again, it's such an empty word. But when we are okay in ourselves, and okay in our souls, when our soul is okay in the world, let's put it that way, that soul, like the soul that is laid out in a field, looking up at the sky, looking at the clouds, being seen or not being seen by a hawk, by some stranger's eyes on YouTube, by a beetle. All of that is good when our happiness is present, when just being okay with life and what life is available to us as a state of being. And I mean, I said we can't own that, but of course, as we know, we can do various things to generate more of that as opposed to less of that. And we also know, or I also know, of the things that I'm doing that are not, shall we say, Oops. I've lost my temperature setting. They're not contributing to our happiness, and yet those are life patterns which we are caught by. Oh, here comes the porcupine. We are caught by. We are skewered, snared, by, and if we're not careful, that will take us into a culvert. And that will be the end of that kind of happiness, whatever that kind of happiness is, or just the end of happiness. Again, sort of amusing that the poem ends in this very definitive way. You know, like, well, if you let your happiness be stolen away by a porcupine and that porcupine goes into a culvert, well, you're fucked, buddy. Sorry. You know, that'll be the end of your happiness. And I guess that's what, you know, all of those people who lecture us or remind us, thank you. It's not a lecture. It's not a lecture. It's a reminder of how we, might impinge on our happiness, how our happiness, how we might kind of fuck it over for ourselves, essentially. And, you know, they'll talk about exercise and sleep and diet and substances and all of that good stuff. And that's all true. And really what I think all of these people are saying ultimately is, you know, those porcupines, whatever the porcupines are for you, right? Whether it's, your incessant worrying, or whether it's your laziness and inability to exercise, or whether it's your bad diet, or whether it's drugs and alcohol, or whether it's getting caught in an isolated, wholly solitary way of living and being, whatever it is, whatever that porcupine is. Like, careful, because happiness is going to follow it. I don't know why happiness follows the porcupine. Surely happiness should go like, ooh, that porcupine, I'm going to stay away from that porcupine. But happiness follows it. Because I guess happiness sees in the porcupine, maybe it's a very cute porcupine, maybe it's one of these porcupines. Hang on, let me show you this porcupine. Maybe it's this one, this porcupine. Surely one of the cutest porcupines in existence, because it's, I mean, look at it. Instead of all of its, I mean, it's got some quillage happening, but it's also got this fern growing from it, although it's quite difficult to water, and then the water often leaks out, even though it's got a kind of plastic inner. But it's, I love it. I love this porcupine. So maybe it's this porcupine. And maybe whatever this porcupine is offering us something which we follow. Maybe it's offering us, I don't know, escape from our worries. Maybe it's offering us a certain form of numbed out oblivion, same thing. Maybe it's offering us pleasure and wonder, as in the pleasure and wonder of that which is growing from the back of this porcupine. Maybe it's offering us all of those things. Maybe it's offering us some overbrewed green tea. Could be offering us anything, really. And so we follow it, and it leads us into a culvert. So what is a culvert? A culvert is a sort of a pipe that is used to funnel out excess sewage or water. I've watched a couple of videos about culverts. They often seem to get blocked. People in these YouTube videos are cleaning out these culverts quite often. Basically, they are pipes you don't really want to go up because you will. They don't really lead anywhere, or wherever they lead to, I guess, a big old mass of shit or mud or whatever the case may be. Presumably, that's why you don't want to go into a culvert, because you might get blocked. You might get lost in that culvert and not come out, like the porcupine, which would be the end of your happiness. Not because you were dead, because that would be fine, but more because your happiness got drawn away from fields and sky and clouds and communing with hawks and beetles, and instead gets kind of locked into this kind of porcupine trail mission. But the happiness does follow the porcupine. It can't help it. It can't help it. It sees something in the porcupine that thinks, this will make me happy. It doesn't realize that what will really make it happy is all the other stuff. I suppose at the moment, because I haven't really got anyone to share anything with other than myself and Max and YouTube. And I don't think I'm alone in this. I don't think I'm alone. I mean, I am alone, but I don't think I'm alone in this particular quandary. But in this moment, clearly, for me anyway, YouTube is the porcupine. Or maybe YouTube is the culvert. I mean, it is a tube, as we know. And maybe I get a sense more and more, because these are the people who are mainly on YouTube, right? That the YouTube, the tube I'm speaking into, the culvert as it were, is kind of going, through all of the spheres that it has to pass through, but it's landing up inside the consciousness of my nephew Milo, who is 14 years old, just been diagnosed as autistic. And the reason why I'm thinking of my 14-year-old nephew Milo is that I'm trying to think of someone who would not give the biggest fuck about poetry, about any of this, right? Like, zero fucks given to any of this, which is how it should be when you're, you know, a 14-year-old autistic weirdo with little interest in anything other than computer games. So I'm imagining myself speaking down this tube. I mean, not this stuff, but like saying all my wise thoughts. All my wise thoughts. All the clever ideas I've ever had about anything. Poetry, literature, philosophy. And it all just going. And he's like, oh, what the fucking... It's YouTube. That is YouTube. But my fantasy of YouTube is laid out in the first verse. I laid my happiness, I laid myself, I laid my being, I laid my soul in a field. And started speaking. And I wasn't alone in this field. This is the fantasy, right? The fantasy is that someone else in this field not only knows who Mary Ruefle is, but actually gives a fuck about Mary Ruefle, Mary Ruefle's poems, about what they mean, about what can be said about them, what can't be said about them, what can they teach us, what can't they teach us, how do they bamboozle us in good ways and silly ways, and I mean all of that good stuff. I guess what we're just talking about here is human interaction 101. There would be this other human, and I presume they exist. I mean, I don't know. I've never met this other human. I've never met another human being who, you know, who would give a shit about Mary Ruefle's selected poems. Or frankly, anything that I give a shit about. Not really. I don't know where these people live. I don't know where they hang out. I don't know where they congregate. Nowhere near me. Nowhere. Nowhere at all. So this is the fantasy, right? The fantasy is I walk into this field and I lay my happiness out. I lay my poem out. It's almost like a beach towel or something, right? You just lay it out. And this other person goes, "Oh my God, a Mary Ruefle poem, and you brought it for us." And I'm like, "Yes! And look, it's printed on this beach towel." I know, amazing. We don't even have to sit and look at a page. You know, we can just sit on the towel. Or maybe one of those planes that, you know, skywriter planes, right, could just write the poem across the sky as we're sitting there together, me and this fantasy other, who is not Milo. We could sit together and participate in the exploration of this poem. That's all I want. And I guess at a metaphysical level, that can be achieved as long as I actively and defensively in some way repress or forget that whatever it is we call reality doesn't have this to offer. Reality is, in this sense, a kind of a culvert when it comes to talking about, you know, the poems of Mary Ruefle, when it comes to doing poetry koans. But that's how it's always been. I mean, in the traditional koan, right, you know, I don't know, whatever it is, what's the sound of one hand clapping, blah, blah, blah. You couldn't go and just do that with anyone. You know, you had to go and surrender. You had to go and submit. There's a lot of submission in classic koan practice, right? You had to submit to a master, to the one who knows, or the one who leads, or the one who guides, or the one who fashions. You had to submit to this master, and they would lead you through the koan. I mean, it's kind of like a therapy paradigm, if you think about it, right? You go along with all your insufficiencies and shame and emptiness and despair and blah, blah, blah. And then the master, the therapist, interrogates all of this in some way, and you say stuff and they say stuff. And in the transference, you, and maybe even them, I don't know, you and the other person are in that field on the big beach towel, which has got, you know, Mary's poem printed on it. And you are having a meaningful moment together. I mean, that's all we want, isn't it, really? I don't know. We just want to have meaningful moments with other humans who like what we like, do what we do, enjoy exploring those things that we enjoy exploring. It seems so simple. So why have I, but not just me, just why aren't we able to achieve this? Why do we end up talking into a frickin' tube? And we don't even know who that tube is, who that tube's connected to. As I say, the tube, the culvert, my deepest fear is that this is going, well, maybe no, that's not my deepest fear, actually. My deepest fear is not that this goes into the ear of Milo, because actually that's fine. Because going into the ear of Milo would just simply go, oh, God. Right, there we go. He's watched it for 3 seconds. That's the Milo viewer, who, when I look at my data for, I mean, not this crap, but, you know, for the things that I put care, attention, I wonder if they'll like this. bullshit into, right? I mean, most of the views on those videos are that anyway. 3 seconds of like, oh, why the fuck did the algorithm give me this? Oh. Why the fuck do they think I want to watch this? I don't want to watch you. Fuck off. I don't want to watch you. How dare you utilize 3 seconds of my attention? How dare you claim 3 seconds of my attention? I think we all feel that way with content that doesn't do it for us, right? Which, as we all become more and more ADHD, is becoming most content, because happiness would say, dude, the only content you need is a sky and the right frame of mind to dig it. You don't need any of the tubes. The tubes will come intravenously at some point. You don't need them now. But us moderns, we fail to follow that advice. Because we're chasing those goddamn porcupines. I don't know what I'm saying. But I think that's what I want to use this space for at the moment. I want to use it as a place to say things and not know what I'm saying, and in the not knowing of what I'm saying, say something that I need to say, which is not to say something you need to hear. But again, this fantasy other, who I think is also me when I am enjoying the company of another human being. Which I get to do a number of times a week. In the sense of having these freely associative discussions, which our culture calls therapy. I don't really care what you're going to call. I don't really care what you call it. You can call it whatever you like. For me, they are freely associative discussions where someone comes along, they do what I'm doing here, and I enjoy, in a way that's hard to describe, but I think you may, if you are a human being, you may understand what I mean by this enjoyment. I enjoy all the things that they are not enjoying in themselves, maybe. I enjoy their confusion. I enjoy their worries and fears and shame. Yeah, I enjoy their shame. Not in a schadenfreude way, not in a sense that I'm enjoying the fact that they are feeling ashamed, but I enjoy knowing that that this aversive experience is something we all have. And because they have paid for us to have an hour of their unfurling, of their telling, of their... I mean, in a way, it's very much like a sort of almost a psychoanalytic position here, right? You know, someone lies on the couch, they look at the ceiling, they look at the sky, they talk, another listens. I think it's very beautiful. Kind of holy, as close as we can get to what I understand from my sensibility and from what I feel to be holy. It's a holy experience. So why am I unwilling to pay for it? Why am I trying to get that experience with the tube, right? Because in a way, I could take 70 to 100 pounds today and I could go and find a human being who will quite happily, just as I do, sit in front of me and listen to me do this. They'd be thrilled if I turned up with a poem. God, I would be like, I would wet myself with happiness if one of my clients just turned up and said, hey, this poem's really been bedeviling me recently. Can we talk about it? Yes, please. But even without the poem, as naff as it sounds, these people presenting themselves to me, talking to me, they are poems. Everyone who comes and talks to me for that hour is a poem. And in a way, I suppose I respond to them as I'm responding to a poem, with curiosity, with care, with interest. Okay. Yeah. So what's the porcupine about? The culvert? What's... And I could pay someone to do that for me. So why am I trying to do it through the tube? Well, first of all, obviously, cheaper. But also, I guess, this would be a very different poem if the poem began, I walked into my therapist's office and spoke to them about myself. It doesn't have the same feel to it. It doesn't feel like me and this other person, this soulmate, for want of a better word, I don't know, this friend, I guess, yeah, me and this friend sitting in a field talking about a poem. It doesn't feel the same. And yet the metaphysical experience for both of us, I think, would be fairly similar. Yeah.